State Director for Adult and Family Education at the DC Office of the State Superintendent of Education. Also, uh, I wanted to take this opportunity to also have Dr. Heather Bruce from the University of the District of Columbia send you greetings as well. And then also wanted to acknowledge Stacey Downey, Cynthia Brown, members of the Adult and Family Education team who are supporting us during today's webinar. Um, we have the honor and privilege of having Jen Vanek, the Director of EdTech Center at World Education, with us this morning to facilitate a webinar on ideal support for you, PD for distance educators. And she's going to share some innovative practices for providing services to residents at a distance. Dr. Bruce, would you like to say something to welcome everyone as well?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Heather Bruce, Director of the Adult Education Program at the University of the District of Columbia. Welcome to this session. I know you're going to find it very interesting.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce. Jen?
Please. Hi, everyone. Hi. And are you looking at my full screen slides right now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is actually I've never actually done a webinar like this where we've focused on describing different PD opportunities. And I really appreciate the opportunity to do this and to put everything that is available to you in the District of Columbia in sort of one container of one webinar. So what I'm going to be doing today is talking through all the opportunities that that have been arranged for you to take part of as part of the District of Columbia's participation in the IDEAL Consortium. So just a quick word about that. The IDEAL Consortium is a collection of states that have come together in order to help work together to figure out how to best deliver distance and blended learning for adult basic skills, adult literacy, IET, and ESOL students across the country. So it's really wonderful to be with you here today. So I just want to say a tiny bit more about the EdTech Center. I'm Director of Digital Learning and Research at the EdTech Center at World Ed. Our job is to create opportunities for professional development, to support and I guess motivate innovation to happen across the country by providing technical assistance and putting people in conversation with each other so that local innovations can be expanded on in other places. We also do research and evaluation work, and we support the advocacy efforts of National Digital Inclusion Alliance through our work with Digital Us in order to make access to technology more widespread. We are totally motivated by the idea that digital inclusion is the key to many other types of inclusion to in our country, for adults in our country. Economic inclusion, digital civic engagement, full employment, access to opportunity to support education goals. So we are completely dedicated to this in our work, and this is sort of what informs the work going forward. So let's start out by just going through some of these options that we have arranged for distance education. PD for you. We are living in really strange times, of course. We understand that a lot of the past thinking about how to implement distance education or blended learning has had to shift. The language that we use, the structures that we're thinking of putting in place have all had to shift because of the pandemic. And we realized that we need more flexible and sustainable opportunities, because what many of us were doing in the early days of the pandemic is not necessarily what we would call sustainable. A lot of effort went into just sustaining contact with students and setting up initial infrastructure so that completely remote instruction could occur. And given the uncertainty in the days ahead, my job to help programs think about how they can take their really, like maybe their past work in distance education and this emergency mode that they were working in during the early days of the pandemic, and kind of merge those two things together to help support sustainable models of distance and blended or remote face-to-face instruction. So we've reframed much of our thinking around distance education, informed by innovation that we've seen happening across the country in terms of making completely remote models. And I'm going to be able to present these to you in 3 webinars in September. So if you have attended the Ideal webinars in the past, you might notice that these titles look very similar, but what we've been doing is rebooting the examples that we're able to draw on in order to call attention to how these practices can be accomplished completely at a distance if that is the need. We are going with the assumption that people might be phasing in and out of being able to participate with students in class, but we want programs to be well situated to provide these things completely remotely. So I believe that your leaders in DC have provided invitation information to you for these webinars, and I hope to see many of you there. Any questions about the webinars or anything else you want to add, Stacy or Michelle or Heather? Dr. Bruce?
This is Michelle. We're very excited to make this 3-part professional development series available to you during the month of September. As Jen stated, we did offer this in early summer. One thing we have been working with Jen for some time now, and prior to COVID-19, and we were able to work with our providers to develop an action research distance learning plan prior to the pandemic. And as in doing so, our providers were well positioned to continue to offer services at a distance to their customers. So those of you, it doesn't matter if you're an adult education provider, if you're a training provider, if you're a supportive services or transition provider, we all have to have processes in place in order to strategize how to best serve our customers. So if you can't participate, you might want to make sure that a member of your team is able to do so that they can share the information with you. Dr. Bruce?
Okay, so shall
Okay.
I go on? Yeah. So the next PD opportunity I want to share with you is a series of self-paced courses that we have that we offer to you through the Ideal membership. Learners can self-enroll in these. They're housed in our Moodle, and they cover 3 topic areas. There's an intro to open ed resources, an intro to mobile learning, and an intro to blended learning. So these are up and they're rolling. I will show you what they look like housed in Moodle in just a second. But I also want to just call attention to the fact that I'm sure you'll have access to these slides, and there's an actual slide here describing how you'll get enrolled. And there's actually a link in the notes here where that takes you to the support document that can help you self-enroll in these courses. So let me just stop sharing full screen here and find this site. Okay, so this is your your DC Moodle site, and you can see that these courses are just right here on the top of the screen. We'll log into one of them. So this is a very basic introduction to what blended learning is, and I do want to say that the current version of this course has not been updated to include sort of a pandemic framing, but we are in the process of making those changes and expect that they'll be done by the end of September. But it is a very useful course nonetheless, because it helps you understand different models for blended learning. And I feel like a model is a very important place to start when you're considering what your implementation would look like. It gives you a framing. So we provide some definitions of blended definition of blended learning. We walk you through some models, and then we walk you through how you might be able to implement this in your classroom. We also touch a little bit on NRS policy with respect to reporting time in a distance and learning policy or a distance learning scenario. And we provide a very short assessment and reflection along the way in order to help you structure your learning. Just want to point out that these learning objects are actually created using Articulate Storyline. And so you could, if you didn't want to take the course within it, or if you wanted to share any one of these little components more broadly, you could technically take the link and share it with others. But this is a video-based, interactive learning experience for you. And I think the whole thing probably takes about 3 hours to accomplish. Very similarly, we have the other two courses are laid out in very much the same way. Intro to Mobile Learning walks learners through why it's very important to make sure that everything you offer is through a mobile-friendly environment, and gives you some strategies for implementing it. Give actually some tools that you can use that are mobile friendly, and then walking through some more instructional strategies through again, we've built many of these learning objects through a packaged learning object where you could actually probably take this and share it with others who didn't want to be in the course and complete the course completely. But we think it's important to integrate opportunities for reflection and demonstration of skills so that you can actually get CEUs and you can have a comprehensive learning opportunity here. And then the Open Ed Resources course I really like, because the idea behind this course is to not only introduce you to what an Open Ed resource is. It's a free online digital resource to support teaching and learning, but we also talk you through examples and ideas for how to find them. And then most importantly, how to evaluate what you're finding. There's a lot of stuff out there on the web, and it's often overwhelming to sort through it and figure out how useful it is for you. So we provide you with some tools to help you evaluate these resources so that you can determine whether or not they're going to work for you. We also give you an opportunity to construct your own rubric to help you create, like, basically you can take these best practices and draw on them to create your own evaluation framework that you can use as maybe like a checklist on the wall next to your computer, or over time maybe something that becomes more internalized to help you understand whether or not a particular OER that you might find online is going to suit your learners' needs. So again, we're thinking around a 3-hour course, totally free. Again, these modules built-in Storyline are self-contained and maybe even useful links to share with people. Okay, any questions about the self-paced courses here? And I can see, I can't get to it because of the pop-up here for sharing my screen, but I can see the link here. I don't know, Stacy, if you want to chat the link to the registration, actually the registration form, that might be helpful.
Sure, yeah, and I have a bunch of other EdTech tabs open on different for M-learning and so forth in case you call out those. But yes, I can. E-learning.
Cool. So shall I go on? Any questions about this from anyone on any of the participants in the call?
Feel free to unmute yourselves and ask a question. I don't see any in the chat at this time, but we would
Hello,
love to.
I have a question. My question is, you mentioned updating on the blended learning module. Can you just share some of the particulars that we can expect in September?
Yeah, so it's my idea that the language that we have in the module is very particularized for a scenario where we are assured we can be in a classroom environment. And what I want to do is, they're mostly just language shifts. I want to make it clear that I think in a completely remote scenario, we can still do blended learning. The heart of blended learning is considering multi-modality and, and having them integrated into one teaching and learning experience. So for example, where a traditional definition of blended learning would be an online component and a face-to-face or an in-person component where the teacher is monitoring learning in both and adjusts one to support the other. I still think that's possible when we're working remotely because so many programs are doing face-to-face synchronous classes,
Sure.
Zoom. So basically what I want to do is just rewrite this with some more flexible language so that people don't look at the definition of blended learning and just say, oh, I can't do that right now because we can't meet in class.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, great. So let me just move on to a few of the other things that we've done. And if it's okay, I'm just going to leave it out of presentation mode because it's easier for me to get to my tabs so I can show you what's going on. So in the very early days of the pandemic, we decided, actually within the first week, that we needed to start exploring expertise across the country and figuring out a way to share it more globally. We also realized that a lot of our descriptions about how to implement distance learning or distance education were dependent on a classroom context or an assumption that there would be lots of in-person engagement. So the first thing we started doing was to create a resource website, which you can see here, Tips for Distance Learning. And I can actually go there. Got so many things open, let's see. Here we go, Tips for Distance Learning. So this is the resource website that we created to help programs either reboot their distance education program because it had a strong face-to-face or in-person component, or to help programs that had never done distance education before but needed to and wanted to get more teachers to be able to do distance ed. So we created this website that's structured around the idea that we needed to provide both links to learning resources and tips for implementation. So as you read through the site, you'll see that we offer a series of briefs. The first one, situated right at the top of the page, is a step-by-step plan for how to get going, including descriptions and technologies that you might use to plan your communication, to do an inventory of the technology resources you have available, to figure out how to support PD for your teachers and learners, and support ongoing tech support for learners, and then some advice for selecting and organizing learning content. So that was our first brief that we wrote. And then we have lots of other links to resources and tips here from others who are writing about how to shift online. And then very important to us is to figure out how to get learners connected to free or low-cost internet access. So we provide some links to those resources here. Then we have directories of free learning resources. So these are actually links to curated lists of learning resources, most of which are free, many of which are free, that we hope programs will use to support their distance education programming. The other thing we link to is an OER repository. So OER, again, remember they're open ed resources. They are definitely free. And there are several useful directories that have curated lists of OER that are organized in a way that make them very useful. And so we've added some lists there. And then we've also been keeping track of deals from publishers. And actually, we're going to be updating this at the end of the month because many of these initial deals from publishers are starting to expire. Many of them are offering different types of deals, but this is a good place to start. If you're looking for if you need to purchase a licensed curriculum, I know that you have access to those, many in DC already, and so this might not be for you, but if you're looking to supplement, you should look here. I do want to call your attention to one. CellEd is something that works really well for learners who don't have access to Wi-Fi. It is a learning curriculum or a series of curricula that are available and work on they actually work on a flip phone. Learners learn through voice messaging and calls and quizzes that are built into texting. The other cool thing about CellEd is that learners can get connected with a coach that can respond to redirect learning or to answer questions if that's needed. CellEd has many free options right now. And I encourage you, if you're looking for something that's a little bit more flexible and will reach more learners who don't have internet, I encourage you to check this out and check out their free options. They have many free options rolling through the end of 2020. So just one thing to look out for. Also on this site, we have, I'm just going to scroll down. And then we have some recommendations for how you might share content with learners. I feel it's really important to make sure you have all of your digital resources linked to from one home base or one homeroom. So we provide some examples of technologies that are really good for that. And then what follows are the rest of our briefs. We've written briefs on implementation, on screening, on recruitment, screening, and orientation, on teaching online, and on assessing learners. So you can check out those 2-page briefs at the bottom of this site for some quick information that is evidence-based. It's built on past research and past examples of successful implementation from Ideal Consortium members. So that is the resource site. Along with this, we have been providing weekly or twice a month, more recently, webinars featuring innovation that we've noticed happening across the country. The link here is to the directory of our archived information of these webinars. And actually, let me go here and link to it this way. What you can see on this page is for each of these webinars, we have a recording of the archive, we have the actual slides, and then the way I structure these webinars is that I have 2 guest presenters for an hour-long presentation. Each takes 10 or 15 minutes, or 15, 20 minutes to present, and then we have Q&A, and then the other one goes. And then we break out into new conversations in breakout spaces, and where it's an informal conversation where you can ask more questions of the presenters that will help you understand how you could implement the idea they shared. So we have access to the breakout session notes and actually have access to there's an embedded link to the recording of that conversation too. So I'm actually very proud of this webinar series. It's proved to be really effective, and we've been able to cover a very wide range of topics. So for example, on the 14th, we talked about how a program in Texas is doing team teaching in their online learning. That was one of the breakout sessions. And then another session was on how a CBO that supports Latino frontline service workers was using Facebook as a way to convene students and deliver instruction. So very, very innovative opportunities here for you to view and to figure out how to build on. You can register for these webinars by clicking on the link here, and we hope to see you soon. We have one coming up actually. The 21st is the next one. Hang on a second, something just happened in my house. I gotta change locations. Sorry about that. This is the work at home crisis, right? Okay. So what I have going on next for you is to introduce you to another opportunity here. We are also offering distance education coaching through the EdTech Center. We have two very talented teachers who have done lots with technology. We have Kathleen O'Connell, who works for World Education, and Susan Gare, who is a very talented teacher and teacher mentor from the state of California. And if you follow the link here, which maybe Stacy can chat, you will be able to sign up for very small group coaching, a very small group coaching session. And then these teachers are actually also available to work with you independently if you want to continue a conversation. So the idea of our PD is that we start with a bigger picture like webinar. I mean, some of these webinars have had like 300 or 400 people on them, and then we're funneling it down to smaller opportunities for coaching, and then one-on-one or very small group extended conversations through the coaching conversations. So do check those out. They're going to be running through September. Then the next thing we have for you is a mobile learning series. We, you might know, led a team in the adult literacy communities competition for the X Prize, where we helped people take some free apps and figure out how to use them. We were able to win because we had the most students who downloaded and then used the apps. And we've taken all of that learning from the community of practice that we created in order to create a resource website where we've put many of the resources that these practitioners were using in support of their mobile learning programs. So these are resources created around outreach, attracting new students, attracting partners to help you find students, onboarding, how do you show students how to use the app? How do you make sure they understand the expectations? And then what kind of instructional support can you put around the mobile learning app that they're using? And then evaluation is, again, in guidance to help you understand if an app is a good fit for you. So please check out this website and make use of these resources. I can just show you that on each of these pages, there are these linked resources. We either provide a link to an external resource, or in many cases, we actually have created templates that you can download and use. So for example, we think it's important for you to plan your communications and your outreach. And so we've provided a template that you can use to do some of that comms planning. Also connected with this, we have our, there's the coaching. I meant to point this out. This is the coaching registration link. When you go to that coaching page, you'll be able to register for the coaching sessions here. And then you can also register for our next webinar coming up with our M-Learning series by going to the M-Learning page, or the events page right here. Our next webinar will be coming up, and we'll be on the 19th next week, and we'll be talking about some of those evaluation resources. So please do register for that webinar. We're welcome. We would welcome you at any of these, in fact, at our August 21st distance education strategy session, at any of the coaching sessions, or at the M-Learning webinar coming up. So why don't I pause just to see if there are any questions about this series of webinars that we're offering. Still with me?
Yes, please.
Most definitely.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Feel free to
definitely.
unmute yourselves.
Thank you. Yes, we're following great resources.
Excellent. Yeah.
So I just have a few more things to share. And one that might be of interest to you is a blended learning guide that I wrote with David Rosen. This is a New Readers Press publication that we were asked to co-author. And essentially what we do in this, it's about a 100-page guide. And what we do is break down how to, like, what is blended learning and how you can construct a blended learning model or approach that works within your program. We offer, scenario-based strategies for why you would use blended learning in any given context. We offer a list of steps you might use to get started. And then we offer, examples of what blended learning looks like using particular tools in different scenarios to give you sort of a scenario-based view of that you might work toward. We also offered many different links to different types of resources, and then try to help you understand what challenges you might face in your blended learning program. And so the link, maybe if we could chat the link, Stacy, this is a free publication from ProLiteracy. It's a PDF that's got clickable links in it. So I hope that you will definitely check this out too. Again, though, that this was published before the pandemic, and I encourage you as you're reading through it, to consider anything that is mentioned as happening in class as still possible, but in a slightly different way as you move your in-person classes to face-to-face but remote instructional opportunities through something like Zoom, or maybe you're using this tool too for your in-person classes. The last publication I want to share with you is this report that I worked on with several other scholars in the field of adult basic skills education. I'm a member of a volunteer task force called the Evidence-Based Adult Education System. We're a group of researchers who are coming together to try to figure out how to remember NICSL and NIFL, the National Institute for Literacy, these research initiatives from the past that have laid a groundwork for a lot of the good work that's happening today. Well, we think it's time to have a reconvening of something like NICSL or something like the National Institute for Literacy to get us back on a research agenda to support a deeper understanding of how adult literacy programs, adult basic skills, adult ESL programs should be developed in the future, particularly in light of the rapid need for everyone to make good use of technology because of the pandemic. So this report is a joint effort between eBay's and the EdTech Center, and then published by ProLiteracy. And the eBay's research were about 50 interviews conducted by several of the people that you see listed here as authors, who were able to interview state directors, PD professionals, program coordinators, and teachers, to find out what they did in response to the COVID pandemic. And then at the EdTech Center, I worked with the American Institute for Research to author a survey that we sent out across the field. And they were either program administrators or teachers who completed the survey. There were 1,000 responses, about 900 of them were useful to us. And we put all of the findings together in this one report. The link is here. I think Stacy can probably chat it. And essentially, we were able to weave the qualitative data, the data from the survey into the interviews into the survey responses to understand some big picture findings about what happened in the field. So for example, we found that at the program level, programs who had some prior experience with distance education had less disruptive shifts to 100% remote instruction. But the teacher's experience within those programs varied whether or not the teacher themselves had prior experience with distance education. So if you were a teacher who had done distance ed in a program that supported distance ed, you were much better situated than even if a teacher who worked in a program that did distance ed, but the teacher hadn't done any before. And then of course, the majority of the respondents were actually writing in from programs who had never done distance before and teachers who had not done distance before. And so it was very interesting to see some of the struggles they faced. By and large, the biggest challenge these programs faced was around access to technology. Teachers and students alike had problems accessing the appropriate technologies to implement their work. In the early days of the pandemic, I think people were doing anything they could, but now as the requirement for remote learning has stretched now and is stretching even into fall, it's really clear that programs that are prioritizing access issues are going to be the ones that are going to be able to serve the most learners, and that programs that provide the technologies their teachers need are going to be the ones that can deliver instruction. Another interesting learning from this report is that in the early days of the pandemic, I would say through June, which is when the cutoff for these data collection efforts ended, most programs were prioritizing providing affective support, and many said as long as they could stay in contact with their students, they felt like it was a success. Connected to that was the fact that there was not a lot of assessment going on in the early days of the pandemic through mid-June. And because it just simply wasn't feasible, there weren't procedures in place to do any kind of remote assessment. So the assessment strategies that most programs and teachers relied on were in-person check-ins, like comprehension checks done through video conferencing, or quick quizzes that were created using something like Quizlet or Kahoot, or even just monitoring learner understanding through what was going on in an online curriculum. So it's really clear that laying into place access to technologies to support ongoing instruction and figuring out a way to make those instructional strategies sustainable is going to be really important going forward, because over time, though the initial efforts to just maintain connection and provide affective support, maybe de-emphasizing assessment, over time, I don't think that's probably the way we want our adult literacy and ESL and adult basic skills programs to be going. I think that's been fine in the short term during the assessment or during the early days of the pandemic, but now we have a new way of working because of the situation that we're in for an indeterminate amount of time. So we need to start thinking about how to work more of those assessment strategies in. So why don't I pause to see if there are any questions about these two publications? Or if you have any other questions about the rapid response report, I can try to answer them too.
Hello?
Yeah.
Could you give some examples of some of the evaluation or assessment tools that people are using now?
Yeah, so quick comprehension checks delivered through texting is something that's happening. Or using Quizlet or Kahoot, like I said. The number one assessment strategy that was reported in this study was actually calling students and checking in and giving direct feedback on work. And those calls either happened in small groups through like a Zoom or actually independently.
Okay.
So that's what we've seen so far. And then of course, programs that have access to a licensed online curriculum were making good use of those curricula, and students were being assessed as they engaged and moved through the learning that was contained there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, you can look for more information on this coming out. We have a very, one of the next steps for me in this work was to convene. So at the same time the eBay's study was happening and our EdTech Center survey was going around, COABE did a survey, ProLiteracy did a survey. There were large states that did surveys like California and Texas. And I convened all of those people into a task force that actually addressed all of our findings across those studies. And we have a very short report coming out the end of like mid-September that gives some very high level findings across all of these studies and some high level implications for how programs might consider reshaping their instruction in order to respond to what we found in the research. So look for that coming up. Another thing I'd like for you to understand or look for in the future, in we got an unexpected but very welcome opportunity to create some free self-paced PD modules for Octave. I'm proud to say that they heard of our efforts to support programs during the pandemic and wanted us to figure out a way to extend those efforts to others and to make it really easy for programs to be able to build on that PD we are providing. So we're creating 4 short self-paced PD modules on each of these areas that you see displayed here on the screen. Each of these modules is going to be structured into micro-learning topics, like 3 or 4 in each of these, that will be posted on our website and available for programs to either link to and on their own websites, or embed in a learning management system of their choosing. Or actually, we're building these in Articulate Storyline, which is a course authoring tool, and we're packaging them in a way that programs can have access to them. And if you have Storyline and if you have somebody who can use that software, you could actually customize them for your own program. So for example, with the assessment module, we talk about NRS policy, but if you were, if you had the capacity to take these modules and customize them, you could actually layer in your own state level policy and really make it state specific. Again, all of this is going to be free and open access, and it will be available on September 30th. On the 30th, we will have our website done, and we're going to have a national webinar where we do a run through of all of the content of these learning modules. And then what will follow will be more guidance and hopefully more work to help programs or states figure out how they might take these modules and integrate them into the PD that they have going forward. I will say that these are intended to be a glimpse and an introduction to these topics. Each of these modules is really only about an hour, and they're each meant to be sort of a survey of multiple issues and topics that are required to be considered when you're working through any of these areas. We see this as an initial sort of high-level offering that we hope is the beginning of a library of more micro-learning courses that we can also then share out. So, I see multiple scenarios for implementation of these depending on the needs of your programs and, the access that you want to provide to the PD for your state's teachers. Any questions about that upcoming PD opportunity? This is what I've been spending almost all of my time on in the last month. As I said, it was an unexpected funding opportunity to do some very, we're honored to have been asked to do the work. And I think it's going to be really, really, really interesting for you as leaders in your own institutions and in your state to check this out and we can have deeper conversations about how you might be able to use this stuff later. Okay, so those are the PD options that I want to talk about. I also just want to flag that I am reading the distance education implementation plans. And after next week, we'll start reaching out to programs to book some time to go over plans to help make recommendations for how you might move forward with your plans. If you had written one last year and as part of the first IDEO 101 cohort for OSSE.
And Jen, hi, this is Michelle. Can you, do you have a plan template available to just share so they can see take a peek at it? It doesn't matter if it's one that's completed or a blank one, just to let them see what a plan template looks like.
Sure, sure. Hang on a second. It'll
Okay,
take
sure. Thank you.
a quick bit of digging. I should be able to get there.
Support independent.
Let me just-
I also want to let everyone know that I also uploaded in the chat some sample surveys that we administered, we developed and administered to our program providers, also for them to share with staff and students to assess the technology needs of providers, staff, and students. You might want to use these as a template to replicate them. It'll help to, especially for customers, that information is pivotal to finding out where the gaps are. Also for staff, we use that information to provide additional funding to our sub-grantees to purchase laptops or Chromebooks or iPads or webcams or whatever they needed so that students could receive services at a distance. So we'll make sure that we push these back out with everything else that we send later on.
Right. So this is the base template plan. This isn't the one that has the action research layered into it, which you all did. But basically the site plan covers the key implementation areas required to support distance education. So we start with recruitment, thinking through how you're gonna, who you're gonna recruit, and the technology that you're going to be using to make sure you're recruiting in a way that attracts people who can really make use of those technologies for learning. And then, what strategies you're going to use, what communication channels, what technologies, what audiences, what partners are you going to use to find those learners. And then we start talking about understanding learner readiness and figuring out ways that you might scaffold learner engagement if they have any readiness issues with respect to using technology to learn. And then we have you consider your orientation ideas, like how are you going to establish the expectations for participation in the program? How are you going to make sure learners have the skills to engage in the curriculum you'd like them to use? How are you going to make sure the learners know what you'll do for them? All of this happens in an orientation session, and I map out different questions for you to consider to shape that. And then we start moving into issues of instruction, so providing ongoing connection and support for technical difficulties, access to technology, how you're actually going to communicate in your teaching, strategies you're going to use to support persistence, how you're going to assign learning content, how you're going to integrate a range of technologies. All of these things are important to consider when you're shaping your distance instruction. And then we talk about tracking student progress, which is also a critical element, not only of assessment, but then also for thinking from a formative learning perspective, and it actually can shape the instruction you're providing. And then moving a little bit more deeply into areas of proxy contact hour collection, deciding when a learner has to be dropped because of lack of engagement, and then, more considerations around the different types of assessments that you're going to provide, and then how you or your teachers are going to engage in professional development. And so I've actually done a webinar on this for you all. If you have the, I'm wondering if we could throw a link into the recording for that webinar I did, or maybe we could share that out with, I'm just not going to find it very quickly here. But I think it was in April, I did a walkthrough of the site plan template and provided some examples.
Yes, Jen, we can share the one that you did for people who are starting out using the template. We have all of that and we can share it.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
And the reason I wanted Jen to share it is because, as she stated, as a result of that, the research with the group of experts and the findings in the COVID-19 rapid response report, that those organizations that had done some pre-thinking or had some degree of, initial planning and implementation of blended learning or distance learning were better prepared, to provide services, more remotely to customers. And we're currently, it's something for us to think about because we haven't. This is just the summer. We're getting ready to embark upon fall. We're still in the, the current COVID-19 environment. So it's just so important that we stay ahead of the game and be prepared to be able to continue to meet the needs of our residents remotely. I just think it's important that we don't lose sight of that.
Okay, any other questions or anything you want me to revisit here?
I have a question. I'm calling, my question is related to assistance with resources for learners who are not enrolled in programs. Have you addressed that in any of the webinars?
Yes, I think if you might check out the recording of the use of Facebook. You might get some ideas about how this organization in California is using Facebook as a way to get people connected to learning and to provide some initial learning. So this is actually a training unit of a labor union, and it's a CBO that works closely with them. And they don't necessarily have registered classes, but they offer these in person, so not in person, but face to face through Facebook, like video chats. And they bring people together using Facebook. So they bring them in using Facebook. And then they also actually they use the Facebook messaging video affordance to actually have a quote unquote class. But these are not people who are registered for an ongoing program. So you might consider using social media. I think that's probably a good way to bring people in who you don't necessarily need to monitor progress of learning for. Mm-hmm. But you also need to understand that if you're not tracking progress and learning, then it might be hard to deliver pinpointed instruction that's really going to be meaningful for them.
Okay, thank you. I think what I'll do is reach out to you independently. I'm calling on behalf of a public library, and I'm trying to envision how we might be supportive of the many learners throughout the district who have not been able to enroll in programs at this time, but how the library can be supportive of them.
Yeah. One thing that pops to my mind really quickly, I don't know if you've heard of the Goodwill Easter Seals Foundation's free learning site, but GCF Learn Free has a multitude of online coursework that is video-based and that covers many different skill areas. So again, this isn't a learning management system. You won't know who your learners are who are working through this content, but it's free and completely open access and covers a huge range of learning topics that people who are coming into the library might be interested in learning about. So you can see there's a lot of technology stuff here, but there's also some language here. There's also adult basic skills stuff happening, GED, math, reading, and career development.
Yeah, so, I am quite familiar with that one, but thank you.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. So yeah. We're doing some computer-based stuff for the North Star Digital Online as well throughout libraries. So
I was just about to pull up that website as you were saying it. Yeah, as you know, North Star Digital Literacy Assessment now has some free curricula that you can connect learners to. I have to figure out where it is. So you can get learners into. Sorry, I'm having problem. I thought it was just right at the top of the page. Oh, build your skills. It is right at the top of the page. Right. So you can have people take a free assessment without logging in or creating an account or anything. And then you can also connect them to, there's a free basic skills interactive unit and then other free resources that they've curated and put together. So there's some more free stuff for you there.
Thank you.
And Paulo, you know, we can provide, you've been on the, I think, Ben, have been participating in some of the other webinars that we had this week. So
yes.
Definitely provide you with access to essential education or career coach or virtual job shadow. You can use those resources, but for learners who don't have access to technology, you might wish to, and I'm sure you guys have, are you guys working, you're working at a distance as well, correct? You're not providing place-based services in the libraries yet, right?
No. As a matter of fact, well, I'll talk to you offline, but MK is not open to the public as of yet. We're going to be moving back into that space.
Okay.
We're looking forward for, you know, what services we can provide for, in particular, in support of programs, but also in support of learners who are not in programs or who on waiting lists or whatever.
Right, but we definitely can work with you on that and try to make sure that we get you connected to the data vault so you can find out what's out there and share that information about other, various programs with customers, but also some making resources like TV 411, the TV 411, one of my favorite adult learner resources of all times, those workbooks that, or other types of materials that can be mailed to students at home. And that's what some of our providers are doing as well for people who don't have access to technology. So yeah, we can definitely talk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to point out two other resources if learners do have access to technology, two very high quality free resources. We Speak NYC is a video-based literacy series and oral language development series where learners learn English through understanding the lived experience of immigrants in New York City. It's really fascinating, very well done, and totally free. So I would encourage you to check that one out. And then also Read Theory is maybe something you've heard of. It's a self-paced, self-access reading app that helps people develop literacy skills, and it is a huge range of proficiencies that are supported, from very beginning skills all the way up through, like, people who are working their way to getting into college. So it's another great one too. Okay, I guess we're about out of time. I just want to point out this is my email address. These slides will be available for you. And if you have any questions about any of these PD opportunities, I welcome them. And more importantly, I hope to see you online at some of these webinars that are coming up.
Thank you so much, Jen. We really appreciate your facilitation of this morning's workshop. We also are so excited about continuing to work with you to offer the 3-part upcoming professional development series and to offer other distance learning professional development opportunities to DC residents. So thank you. We're so blessed that we started working with our own providers in 2019 to help them to be better prepared. We haven't arrived, but we're well on our way, and so grateful to you for being so supportive to us I'd also like to thank the individuals who participated into this morning's webinar. And please, please, please join us this afternoon to learn about Career Coach, another phenomenal resource that we make available. Dr. Bruce, do you have any closing?
I just wanted to say thank you again, Jen, for another excellent round of teaching, so comprehensive and so easy to understand. You do a good job each time.
Well,
I think our students are really blessed.
Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure working with DC. I want to say that I have been shooting notes to some of the people who were in that 2019 cohort, asking if we can use their work as an example in some of this Octave work. So you will, when you go through these modules, you might see some of that good work that happened last year.
Thank you, Jen.
And
Thanks
excuse
again.
me, sorry, before we sign off, if you have not already put your name, agency, and email in the chat, particularly those who are outside of DC government, please do, because we definitely want to get all of these great handouts and materials to you and keep you abreast of upcoming professional development opportunities as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy, for everything today too. Cynthia, the AFE team, thank you all. And everyone, have a wonderful remainder of your day. Hopefully you can join us later on. Bye-bye.